Okay, so I'll just wait a couple of minutes for more people to join. It's really pouring with rain. I hope you can't hear it. Yeah, just wait another minute and then. Can you give me a thumbs up to let me know if you can hear me, and also to let me know if you can hear the rain, because it is really loud. Hiya.
Yeah, I think it's frozen on my side.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it's frozen about 20 seconds in. I think it might be due to your connection. Let's have a look. Does it appear to be fine on your screen?
I mean, I'm just looking at the live, so I'm moving on it, but I guess it's just reflecting my camera.
Okay, no, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so I think I froze for a bit there, but yeah, if you, yeah, I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, brilliant, thank you. So yeah, just a bit about myself. I'm Bez. I work for the Disability Law Service, and I've been there since last July. And before that, I worked for Gingerbread, which is the charity for single parents. And before that, I worked for Citizens Advice. Great, thanks, Lorraine. You can hear me, and it's raining there as well. And thanks, Charlene, for letting me know you can hear me. So yes, that's sort of my background. And yeah, today I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about welfare benefits, just a really quick overview. And if you can post your questions in the comments, that would be really helpful so I can answer your questions. And if you can share the page, share the video and like it so that as many people as possible can watch it as it's happening live, that would be great. Thank you. So yeah, so I'm just going to try and share my screen and give you a quick overview of benefits, but obviously let me know in the comments if it doesn't work. Okay, no, it's not actually letting me do the screen share, so I'll just basically read what I was going to say to you. So I'm just going to give a really quick overview of universal credit, personal independence payment, carers allowance, and council tax reduction. They're sort of, if someone isn't claiming any benefits and has never claimed benefits before, they're probably the best benefits to kind of be thinking about. So just see if anyone's put anything on the comments. Yeah. So the first one is universal credit. So basically, if you're on a low income, you may be able to claim universal credit. You cannot claim universal credit if your savings are over £16,000, but if they're under that, you might be entitled. And as I said earlier, do note if you're claiming any other benefits, claiming universal credit might stop those benefits. So do seek advice before applying. But if you're not claiming any benefits at all, then universal credit would be the main benefit you might be entitled to. And so universal credit has additional elements for your rent, if you've got children, if you're a carer, and if you're very sick. And if you're working, then 63% of your earnings are deducted from your universal credit amount. So for example, if you were 30 and you were unemployed, you might be able to get £409 universal credit a month. And if you had to pay rent of £300 every month, then you might get £709 universal credit. But then if you were working, 63% of your earnings would be deducted from that. and you can just apply on the gov.uk website. If you just search gov.uk universal credit. And then the next benefit I wanted to talk quickly about was personal independence payment. So I'm just going to see. Basically that is the benefit for people who find daily life harder because of their health conditions. It is not affected by income or savings. So to make a claim for PIP, again, if you go on gov.uk and type in either PIP, PIP or personal independence payment, it will give you the number. The number is 0800 and basically, if you've got difficulties with any of the following, at least 50% of the days of the year because of your condition, then you should consider applying. So that includes making food, eating, taking medication, washing or showering, managing your toilet needs or incontinence, dressing or undressing, communicating with other people, reading and understanding written information, mixing with other people, making decisions about money, and that's all the daily living side. And then also you might need help with things like planning a journey or following a route or moving around. So that's the sort of main things you should consider if you're thinking of applying. So thanks for putting in all the questions. I will answer them shortly. I'm just going to do a quick run through of the benefits. So yeah, just again on personal independence payment, in terms of how the government decides whether or not to give you personal independence payment, they've basically got a scoring system. And there's a website called benefitsandwork.co.uk. So all one word, benefitsandwork.co.uk. And that website has got a free web page which shows you all of the points for PIP. So what you can do is you can have a read of that and think about any points you think you might score, and then ideally ask your GP or any other medical professional whether they could write some supporting medical evidence to support your application. And in terms of the points, you will need to score at least 8 points for either daily living or mobility to be entitled to PIP. So just on PIP again, just something people don't always realise about PIP is that it's not just about whether you can do the activity, say cooking, it's about whether you can do it reliably. So reliably includes safely, it includes to an acceptable standard, it includes repeatedly, and it includes in a reasonable time period. So when you're filling out the form, it is a really good idea to think about the impact doing these activities would have on you and explain that in your application form. You could ask a friend or relative to read the form in case they think of anything you've missed. And you also might find it helpful to keep a diary of your symptoms, particularly if you don't have symptoms every day, if you want to demonstrate that you have them at least 50% of the days of the year. So just to give an example, if you have difficulty preparing food because it's painful or difficult for you to chop things, either because it's difficult for you to grip with your hands or it causes you pain, you could argue that you can't do it reliably because you can't do it safely because you might end up cutting yourself. So that would be one example of how you could use that. And then just a couple of other useful resources. The Citizens Advice website has a really good fact sheet explaining how to fill in the application form, and it goes through each activity in detail. And then also on the gov.uk site, if you search assessment guide for assessment providers, personal independence payment, it's got a really detailed guide of what the PIP assessors should be looking at when they do the assessments. So if you want really detailed information about every single activity and what they should be looking at, then that's a really good place to go. And there's also a website called pipinfo.net. So pipinfo.net, and that website has got links to case law, and it also has just a bit of a detailed explanation about each activity, just explaining a little bit more about what the government are looking at when they are assessing your entitlement. Okay, so just quickly now on carers allowance. So obviously people, if you're watching and you do have a health condition that means that you're getting personal independence payment, or that you're getting disability living allowance or attendance allowance, there might be someone like a partner or a relative or a friend that cares for you, and they may be able to get carers allowance for you. Again, I would seek advice before approaching this route, because if you're on the old benefit system, it could impact the amount of benefit you get if they claim carers allowance for you. But sort of briefly, if you're getting the daily living component of personal independence payment, if you're getting the middle or highest care component of disability living allowance, or if you're getting attendance allowance, then they might be able to claim carers allowance for you. They would have to be over 16. They would have to spend at least 35 hours a week caring for you, and their income must be less than £128 after tax, national insurance and expenses. And also they're not allowed to be a student. And just obviously at the moment, with the coronavirus outbreak, there is just some concessions the government's made to carers allowance. So, for example, a break in caring can be ignored if it's caused by either the disabled person or their carer having coronavirus symptoms or having to isolate because of coronavirus. And also you can claim carers allowance if you provide care remotely during the coronavirus outbreak. So this would include giving emotional support over the phone or online. But you would still need to be providing care for at least 35 hours a week. Okay, so just moving swiftly on, council tax reduction. Basically, if you're in a low income, you may be entitled to help with your council tax to reduce your council tax bill. Your local council will each have a different scheme. They might call it council tax reduction, they might call it council tax support. You will not normally be able to claim this if your savings are over 16,000, but if you're on a low income and your savings are under 16,000, you may be able to get a reduction in your council tax. And you can easily look at your local council website, or you can go on gov.uk. If you just search gov.uk council tax reduction, it will lead you to a link where you put in your postcode, and then once you've put in your postcode, then it will show you the page where you can apply at your local council. Okay, so that's just the kind of main benefits that I wanted to talk about initially. So universal credit, personal independence payment, carers allowance, and council tax reduction. There's just a couple of other websites that could be helpful for you when working out what you might be entitled to. So one of them, as I've mentioned, is the Citizens Advice website, citizensadvice.org.uk, which has lots of useful fact sheets on applying for benefits and what you might be entitled to, how to challenge decisions. And also it's got a lot of fact sheets on other things such as housing advice and debt advice and employment advice. Also, to check what benefits you may be entitled to before you apply for them, you can use a benefits calculator. So again, if you Google gov.uk and benefit calculators, it will come up with a list of benefit calculators where you can put in your details. And then finally, Turn to Us is a website which includes not just a benefits calculator, but also a list of grants that might be available to you. So the website there is turn, TURN, the number 2, us, us.org.uk. So turntous.org.uk, and that's got a really helpful list of grants that you might be able to apply for. Okay, so now moving on to answer your questions, and thank you everyone who's been posting questions whilst I've just been giving that run through. So I'll just have a look at those first. So first of all, so Charlene's just commented, there's a grant called Access to Work, which helps people who are working and need some support who've got disability. So for example, if you have mobility issues and you struggle to get to work, sometimes you might be able to use Access to Work to get taxis to work. It might pay for that. So yeah, if you go on gov.uk, if you just Google gov.uk Access to Work, you can find out more about that. So Melanie Body has said, is it possible to get medical retirement with scleroderma? If you can, are there any benefits that you can then get? Because I'm finding it harder to work. So as I've explained in kind of my overview of benefits, the main thing, if you're not claiming any benefits and you're unable to work, then it would be universal credit that you apply for. And then you might also be able to get personal independence payment. So they would be the two main benefits that you would claim. In terms of a pension or something like that, that would be very much down to your workplace, if your workplace has a scheme like that you've been paying into. But there isn't a sort of benefit called medical retirement. It would depend on your workplace. Otherwise, as I say, it's universal credit, and personal independence payment would be the main benefits that you apply for. Okay, so now Lorraine, let me know in the comments, obviously, if that hasn't answered your questions and you want a bit more detail. And as I said before, obviously, if you can like this and share it so that other people can view it, that would be great. And obviously, anyone that's just joined, if you can just write your questions in the comments and I'll get to them. So yeah, Lorraine Parker has said, I have enhanced PIP, both mobility and carers. I am now 67, but it will be looked at in August 2021. I must say I'm very anxious about whether it will be taken off me. Now, the government has said that if you're on PIP and you are over pension age, they're going to be doing light touch reviews every 10 years. So if in 2021 it will have been 10 years since your last assessment, then they probably will do it again. But as long as you've got up-to-date medical evidence, ideally from the last 6 months, confirming that your condition is the same as it was before, then you should be fine. But it's also possible that if you were reassessed more recently than 10 years ago, that they may actually extend that, because that's a relatively recent change, and they may not have written to you about it specifically. But that is what that we're expecting that they are going to do. They've said if you're over pension age, it'll be every 10 years that you get a light touch review. And again, if a light touch review might mean you don't have to have a face-to-face assessment, it may just be based on your papers. So I hope that's somewhat reassuring. Okay, I'm just gonna. So Marcel Nelson has said, I still have DLA, which is disability living allowance, and was advised to stay on this until the government states to change to PIP, personal independence payment. So Marcel, that is absolutely right. And my overview was just of anyone who's not claiming any benefits at the moment. So yeah, if you're on disability living allowance and you're under state pension age, or you've just reached it, the government is going to move you onto personal independence payment at some point. Personal independence payment was designed, unfortunately, so that fewer people could get it than disability living allowance. So generally speaking, it does vary a little bit, because personal independence payment is slightly better if you have mental health conditions. It recognises that a bit more. There's a couple of, it mentions budgeting skills. There's a couple of things on personal independence payment that it doesn't have in disability living allowance. But generally speaking, you may be more likely to get more money on disability living allowance. So there's no particular need to sort of, voluntarily apply for PIP. The government, I think, keeps extending the deadline of when people will be transferred over onto PIP. And obviously we've got the coronavirus outbreak at the moment, so that's going to delay things further. But yeah, generally speaking, the advice is just stay on it until you're told to apply for PIP. And then obviously if you, you can go onto the Citizens Advice website to use the fact sheet to help you apply for PIP, and, use the other resources I mentioned, such as pipinfo.net, if you just want to get a bit more detail on what they're looking for. And yeah, the full points, as I said, if you want to see what points you might get, is at benefitsandwork.org.uk. I think that's the right link, just double check. benefitsandwork.co.uk, and they've got a personal independence payment section where you can view the full list of points and see, if you get 8 points, you get the standard rate. Just look at my benefits chart. So personal independence payment, the standard rate for daily living, which is the same as the care component, and disability living allowance, is £59.70 a week, and the enhanced rate, which is the same as the high care component, and disability living allowance is £89.15. So to get the enhanced rate, you need 12 points, and to get the standard rate, you need 8 points. Okay, and now Aves Bell has said, I started with AIH with severe chronic psoriasis in 2008 and had to finish working. Took a big fight to get disability living allowance at the time. Been on high rate care disability living allowance since then, and had a diagnosis of 5 other autoimmune conditions. But the past 4 years, I've had to be checked every 12 months, and last year they put me on PIP. This last time they took me off high rate care and put it down to low rate, even though my conditions are worse now than ever. I didn't have the energy to fight this decision due to having problems breathing, swallowing and walking, which is obviously very understandable. I just dread having my next assessment, which will be in February next year. I couldn't get any help from anyone with the forms or to go to the assessment with me. Any advice on what I can do to get help? So yeah, it is stressful having to keep getting reassessed for PIP, and disability living allowance didn't have those same regular assessments that PIP has. There is a lot of campaigning by a variety of disability charities, obviously, to try and improve PIP, including longer periods before reassessing people, which has sort of led to this 10-year light touch review once you reach pension age. And I think they've slightly extended the minimum length for a PIP award to be 18 months now, but that's still quite frequent. So as I say, the Citizens Advice website has got a really good fact sheet explaining how to fill in the PIP form. If a lot of Citizens Advice, they may not be able to do it at the moment, obviously because of COVID and the sort of restrictions on face-to-face help that can be given. But if once the coronavirus outbreak is over, hopefully face-to-face services will be back to normal, and they can offer, not every Citizens Advice, but a lot of them do offer form filling appointments. But as I said, you're the expert on your health conditions, so you're the best person to sort of fill in the form. And as I say, the kind of things that you should think about when filling in the form is not just can you do it, can't you do it, but what is the impact on you if you do that activity. If you are preparing food, what is the impact on you of having to chop vegetables, of having to open a tin, of having to open a jar, of having to carry a pan, even if it's relatively light. Have you ever had any accidents doing it? Does it cause you pain? Does it cause you breathlessness? Is it something that you can do regularly, or is it that if you make your breakfast, that's it, you can't make any other meals for the rest of the day? Or is it that you can walk, but it takes you 2 minutes to walk 30 meters, which is a very, very long time. So it's not that you can't walk, it is that it takes you a very long time. So again, if you comment on all those things in the application, that will be really helpful for them to understand it. And then, as I say, it is really, really helpful to have up-to-date medical evidence from the last 6 months, whether you're applying, whether you're challenging a decision, whether you're getting a review on your decision. So if you have got a good GP or other medical professional, specialist, nurse, physiotherapist, and they're willing to write something very bespoke, that specifically says, because of my patient's condition, they have a lot of pain in their hands, or they can't feel things, and that means that it would be very dangerous for them to chop things. It means that it's very difficult for them to wash themselves in the shower, and they need somebody else to do that for them. So if you can kind of go into detail like that. And also, if you have got a carer, then they can also write something. It's not quite as strong as medical evidence, but if you've got someone that helps you wash yourself or prepare food for you, then they could write a letter to just explain what it is that they do to help you. So I hope all of that is helpful, but as I say, do put in the comments if you wanted to ask anything else. Okay. So Samantha Beals has replied to Abe's comment and said, I felt exactly the same last year when I had a PIP interview, and the quote that came back was, you drove yourself and you placed your bag over your shoulder, so basically you're okay. It didn't take into consideration the 2-hour struggle to get out of bed, get dressed and feel half alive to get to the appointment. I didn't have the energy to appeal. I was so angry at the assessor's comments. So Yeah, it is very frustrating. So many of my clients say, the assessor said I could drive, so they assume that I can chop things safely, and it isn't the case. And I know it's difficult to challenge it. And you can get help from places like Citizens Advice to help you challenge it. But it is a very valid argument to say, actually, when I'm doing, for example, chopping foods, that's actually a different activity to driving or putting a bag on. It's something where if I slip, then I could, injure myself really badly. So, um, that wasn't taken into account. And again, if you can get a GP letter to confirm things like that, that would be really helpful. Unfortunately, and again, it's something a lot of charities are campaigning on. Assessors in the assessment do make kind of informal assumptions. So, you might say, I drive, and they might instantly assume that you can do this, this, and this, but they don't say to you, just to let you know, because you said you can drive, I'm assuming that you can cook a meal with no problem. And so because they don't say that, you don't then get the opportunity to rebut that and say, oh, actually, that's not correct. Here are the difficulties I have. So before you have a PIP assessment, it's quite helpful, as I say, to go through the points that are on the benefitsandwork.co.uk website and work out what it is that you need to say to make sure that they recognise that you might be eligible for those points. And there should, at the end of the assessment, be time for you to say anything that you feel that you haven't had a chance to say yet. So if you've got the time and energy before the assessment, just read through the points. Imagine yourself as the DWP, Department for Work and Pensions, as the PIP assessor, and what they'll be looking out for, and just make some notes about things that you would want to say that would show your eligibility for those points. And again, make it clear that you do have those, if it's true, if the difficulties are for at least 50% of the days of the year. Because if you say sometimes, they might just assume that is not very often and therefore not relevant. It's only relevant for them if it's something that you find difficult at least 50% of the days of the year. Okay, so as I say, it is difficult, and it is obviously, if you've got a health condition, your life is hard enough already without having to go through this complicated procedure. But there is fact sheets out there, and there is Citizens Advice Services, and Disability Law Service also does have a benefits helpline. It's very busy, but and we are able to give benefits advice, and we also give community care advice, employment advice, and housing advice. Okay. So Charlene Haddersley has said, I'm a benefits advisor and find a lot of the time people don't send enough evidence in with the forms. I always advise to send medical letters and anything you have to back up your condition. You can never provide too much info. Now, that is absolutely correct. I would say, because PIP is obviously looking at these specific points, it is really helpful if you can to get a bespoke letter that specifically talks about your ability to cook, your ability to wash, your ability to dress, your ability to move around. But yeah, if at all possible, when you're applying for PIP, go visit your GP, try and visit all your medical professionals and try and get a report from them, because often if it's more than 6 months or 12 months old, the DWP doesn't necessarily recognise it as evidence. Okay, so I think that's all the comments from people watching right now. So thank you for everyone that said thank you. I'm glad that's helped. So I'll just move on to the questions that were sent in advance, but do keep posting questions if you've got more. And as I say, do share the video, like it, and post your comments. So there was a question that came in yesterday. So it was about whether someone should update the DWP that they are newly diagnosed with scleroderma on top of other autoimmune diseases. So they said, I was awarded standard rate PIP just before lockdown with 11 points for daily living, but only for mobility. My mobility hasn't worsened, but my anxiety and fatigue levels went unacknowledged despite me having been accepted and waiting for clinical psychology ACT for physical health conditions. Again, the assessor said I had no problem swallowing, but I do. So since learning that I've been reappraised and awarded standard rate PIP, I've been put on mysophonolate and on the shielded list. If I report these and worsening daily living and related mental struggles, might they review and take away my standard rate PIP because they might assume my CTDs are well managed with treatments? It says on the letter that we should keep DWP PIP informed, updated with any changes in treatments and worsening or improved symptoms. Mine are different daily, but never yet resolve. I'm scared of rocking the boat as I do really need what I presently get. It's just that I could really do with one more point for the enhanced rate. So do I need to let them know? And if mandatory, then should I, then do I need to let them know? And if it's mandatory, then should I let them know? It seems high risk as I only won on mandatory reconsideration. So it's difficult. A lot of people call me about change of circumstances, and it's absolutely correct that you are meant to report changes of circumstances to the DWP. About whether your conditions worsened or improved, because obviously that could affect the number of points that you get. So if, extreme example, if you're getting already the high rate for PIP, so you're getting enhanced daily living and enhanced mobility, and your condition deteriorates slightly, it's not really that helpful to report that because you're not going to be getting any more PIP. So a useful thing to do would be to look at the points and see whether you think you would now score more or less points. If you think you would score more or less points, then you probably do need to inform PIP about that. The other thing to bear in mind is that PIP is a long-term benefit. So when you apply and when you're reporting a change in circumstance, they're only interested in changes or conditions or symptoms that have been in existence for the last 3 months and that you are expecting to continue for the next 9 months. So if it's just a one-off thing that's happened for a month and then it's improved again, that's not something that they're going to need to know about. So as I say, it has to have been something that has been the case, it's been a change, it's lasted the last 3 months. As far as you're aware, it will continue for the next 9 months. So I hope that is helpful. And then the other thing is, if you are going to be reporting a change in circumstances, they are going to look at your claim again. They are going to effectively do what they do when you make a new claim. So again, like I've sort of been saying, if you can go to your doctor and get a bespoke letter and that's really comments on every single activity that you want to say you should be getting points for, then that will really help you get the points that you want after you've had that review. So there's sort of all sorts of things that you should think about, when deciding whether to report a change in circumstances. I think, if you get a new assessment report from a specialist medical professional, then, that usually would count as a relevant change of circumstances that you could report. So yeah, it's always worth bearing in mind and remembering, because obviously that is your duty. So you do need to think about that if your condition does get significantly worse or significantly better for a long time. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. Samantha Beals has just said, thank you, I must look into it again as I've struggled with work. I've now lost my job anyway through COVID. So yeah, sorry to hear that, Samantha. It may be that you are entitled to universal credit or other benefits, so it's worth going on the benefit calculators and getting some benefits advice on that. Okay, so Cheryl Nickerson's just posted a question. I've recently been diagnosed with systemic scleroderma. As scleroderma is classed as a life-limiting illness, does this mean it's also classed as a disability? Now, this question of classed as a disability is a complicated one. So for benefit purposes, it's not particularly relevant, apart from possibly if you wanted to request a reasonable adjustment. So if, for example, you're claiming universal credit and you need to go to the job centre, to see a work coach to talk about jobs that you are going to apply for, it might be a reasonable adjustment that you would only look for certain types of job that didn't involve much physical activity because of the nature of your health condition, or it might be that because of the fatigue you experience, you can only, you might be able to ask for a reasonable adjustment that you only look for work which is 16 hours a week or 20 hours a week instead of 30 or 35 hours a week. So for employment purposes, again, it's different. There's a list of specific health conditions such as MS that are counted as disabilities, and then otherwise it's more about how the condition affects you. So you need to sort of seek employment advice on that. So I'd say there is no simple answer to is it classed as a disability. Each wherever you go, whether it's if you're getting a disabled person's bus pass or blue badge, or there's usually a variety of different factors involved as to whether it's a disability. And as I say, for benefit purposes, it isn't really about your condition, it's about the impact of your condition on you and how it impacts your ability to go about your daily life. So I hope that answers that question, but do comment if you want to ask anything else. So I'm just going to move on to some other questions that I got that people sent in, I think, last week. So the first one is, I've got scleroderma and I'm unable to work. What benefits are available to me? Where can I get benefits to help me understand the benefits and the system and to apply for benefits? So as I said in my earlier sort of brief introduction to benefits, if you're not claiming any benefits at all and your savings are under 16,000, then you may be able to claim universal credit, which is a means tested benefit for people on low incomes. It will be relevant who else you live with. So if you have a partner who is working, or you do have savings over £16,000, then you might not be entitled to universal credit. If you are too sick to work and you have been paying national insurance contributions for the last 3 years, then you might be able to claim a benefit called contribution-based employment and support allowance, or new style employment and support allowance. And this pays £74.35 a week. And you can just look on gov.uk ESA and you can find the details there of how to apply. You can do an online form to apply for it, but that one, new style employment support allowance, it's a contribution-based benefit. It is not affected by your savings. It is not affected by your partner's income. So that is one that's quite useful if you do live with a partner. But as I say, it is based on your national insurance contribution. So if you haven't been working for the last 3 years and you've not been paying national insurance, then unfortunately you wouldn't be able to claim that. And then, as I say, if you live on your own and or you've got a partner and they're not working, then universal credit, you might be able to get council tax support to help you with your council tax if you pay council tax. And you might also be able to get personal independence payment if you're not already getting a disability benefit, which personal independence payment, you can get it whether you're working, whether you're not working, whether you've got loads of savings, whether you've got no savings. That's an additional add-on benefit because of the extra costs that you would have if you've got a health condition. Okay, so I hope that answers that. If you're watching now, it'd be great if you could comment, let me know in the comments if you want to ask anything else. Okay, so the next one is, I'm caring for my partner who is living with scleroderma, and what benefits are there for people who are looking after someone with scleroderma? So as I said previously, there is a benefit called carer's allowance. So if you're living with your partner and your partner is getting either personal independence payment daily living component or disability living allowance middle or high care component, or they're getting, they're the sort of two main ones, I think, possibly attendance allowance if you are under pension age as well. So then you might be able to claim carer's allowance, which is £67 a week, but you would have to yourself be caring for your partner 35 hours a week. You would have to be earning less than £128 a week, and you'd have to not be a student. Otherwise, universal credit might be available to you if you're on a low income, and that does include a carer's premium of £160 a month. And then council tax support as well if you're on a low income. And then if your partner isn't getting any disability benefits, you won't be able to get the carer's allowance for them, but it may be that they could look into applying for those disability benefits. The main one, if you're under pension age, is personal independence payment. If you're over pension age, it would be attendance allowance, which doesn't look at your mobility, it just looks at your care needs. Okay, so I've just got a question from Roma Foley, which says, what about if you're retired and living alone? So if you're retired and living alone, then you may be getting state pension. If your state pension is not full, so I'm just going to look up, and there's a benefit called pension credit. Now, if you've got savings over £16,000, over £20,000, you might not get pension credit. But basically, if your weekly income as a pensioner is underneath £173.65 a week for single people, then you might be able to get pension credit to top it up. So again, you can go on the gov.uk website, type in pension credit, and that will show you how to apply. Additionally, if you're not getting a disability benefit and you're over pension age, then you can claim attendance allowance if you meet the criteria of needing someone to regularly care for you or supervise you, or just generally help you out, or if you just have difficulties doing things like washing, dressing, looking after yourself. If you're retired and you're below state pension age, then it is just the same advice. If you're not working, then you might be able to claim universal credit unless you've got savings over 16,000. If your savings are over 16,000, and you've been paying national insurance contributions in the last 3 years, you might be able to claim employment and support allowance new style. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. So I'm now going to move on to another question that I got in advance. So I've lived with scleroderma for 4 years and with 3 young children, a husband with severe PTSD, and trying to hold down a job, it has been a real challenge. So I applied for PIP 3 years ago, and despite all the information I gave, I was told that I'm not entitled. It knocked me, and I did not have the confidence or energy to fight it at tribunal. Since then, my specialist at the Royal Free has recommended that I take health retirement from work, which would be a small amount of money, and I'm in the process for applying for PIP again to try and help support us all. I really hope that it's accepted this time, as financially it is a real struggle. So I would greatly appreciate any support you can provide. Many thanks in advance. So yeah, so sort of similar to sort of previous questions. If you're under pension age and you're not getting PIP and your condition affects your ability to go about your daily life, looking after yourself, moving around, then you can apply for PIP. You can use the Citizens Advice website, a fact sheet on applying for PIP and what to put on the form to help you. You can also go on the benefitsandwork.co.uk website and look at their personal independence payment points list and see which ones you think you'd get and try and make sure you make those points. Then I'm just looking at the comments. Thanks very much for saying thank you. And then just make sure you write down the impact of your condition when you're applying for PIP. So not just saying what you can and can't do, but what the impact on you is. So does it cause you pain? Can you do it repeatedly? Also, if you can get your medical evidence from your various health professionals to back that up, to show that you should be getting those points that you think you should be getting. If you don't get it first time round, don't despair. Half the people that call me, they're calling because they didn't get PIP first time round, or they didn't get what they thought they'd get. The PIP appeal rate is 75% of successes. I think it's gone up to 76% recently. So it doesn't mean that you're not entitled if you don't get it. You can challenge it. As I say, the assessments are quite short. They don't always have time to pick up on the nuances of your health condition. So you can get advice by contacting your local Citizens Advice, or the Disability Law Service has also got a helpline. So that could help you if you want to challenge it. The Citizens Advice website has also got a fact sheet on challenging a decision. And the Benefits and Work website's also got help on that as well. And then it may be, you said you'll get a small amount of money from health retirement. It may be that you can get extra benefits, but I would advise you to kind of get benefits advice on this, because you said you've got 3 young children, so you might be on the old benefit system, so you might need sort of more detailed advice on what the best approach is in terms of applying for additional benefits. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, so Abel has just, and yeah, if you're listening, sorry, about the previous question, do comment if you want to ask anything else. Okay, so Abel's just written, you've just mentioned the ESA contribution-based allowance. Can you explain what that is, as I get confused? I've had income support since becoming ill in 2008, got my private pension also. When they put me on ESA, I was put on contribution-based and had to start paying for my prescriptions also. Will I be staying on this or be put on the other ESA at some point? So if you are getting ESA contribution based, that is the same one that I was talking about. It's, you know, contribution based ESA. It's the only one new claimants can claim. It's based on your national insurance contribution. So you were not, as far as you wouldn't be put on another ESA. But if you were getting income support before, it's possible the ESA might include an income-related amount, which would help you get private prescription to help you get prescriptions for free. So it's worth checking your letter and calling ESA to see, because it is very confusing. So you might want to call for benefits advice. But basically, some people can be entitled to both income-based ESA if they applied before a few years ago, or in very certain circumstances, and if they have got the right national insurance contributions. So just because you're getting contribution-based ESA doesn't necessarily mean you're not entitled to income-based. And so if you can show that you're also entitled to income-based ESA, you might be able to get the free prescriptions. However, you have said that you're getting a private pension also. And so depending on how high that is, that might then disqualify you for income-based ESA, but mean that you can get contribution-based ESA. And the rules on pensions for contribution-based ESA are that if you have a pension and it's more than £85 a week, half of the amount of the pension over £85 will be deducted from your employment and support allowance. So if you're getting a pension and it is £100 a week, that is £15 more than £85. So £7.50 would be reduced from your employment and support allowance because you were getting that pension. So I hope that answers your question, Aves. But if not, you can seek some benefits advice. But yeah, hopefully that helps answer that. Okay. So next question that got sent in was, hi, I'm currently claiming for PIP benefit and require a letter supporting explaining how my condition affects my life. I've got progressive systemic scleroderma, Raynaud's and arthritis. Thank you for any advice you can give me, as I've been turned down once. So again, yeah, so I've talked about this a few times now. So in terms of getting a letter to support how your condition affects your life, as I say, the first thing to do is go to that benefitsandwork.co.uk website and look at the points. You can also find them, I think, on the Citizens Advice fact sheets on PIP, and go through them and say, okay, I think this applies to me, I think this applies to me, I think this applies to me. And then if you can maybe draft up a letter for your doctor with the points that you need them to make. So for example, you know, please can you mention the following? I've got these conditions and the symptoms mean that I have really bad fatigue. They mean that it's really difficult for me to cut things. I mean, it's really difficult for me to wash myself. Can you write a letter explaining, you know, this about my condition? And I'll use that to help support my PIP application. And you know, it's really important for me to get PIP, you know, particularly if you're, you know, if it's relevant, you know, I'll be in financial hardship if I don't get PIP. Thanks, Aves. Yeah, so if you kind of write a letter explaining exactly the points you need them to make based on that list of activities that the PWP will be looking at, and you know, see if they're willing to write that letter. As I say, it doesn't just have to be a GP, it can be anyone who's a medical professional who knows about your health condition. And you know, hopefully they'll say yes, but you know, sometimes they will charge you, in which case you'll say, if that is going to be a difficulty for you, you know, if you can explain in the letter, you know, if you've got any financial circumstances that mean that would be difficult for you. You know, and sometimes they might write a really useless letter which says, my patient says that they can't do this. My patient says that they can't do this. That is not a helpful letter. You want something that says, you know, my patient has these conditions. The impact of this is that it would be very unsafe for them to prepare or cook food because they'd be, you know, they might burn themselves, they might cut themselves. You know, they've got a lot of fatigue. That means they'd find it very difficult to do that more than once a week, you know, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it is, as Charlene Haddesley's just said, just be aware some doctors charge for letters. It is a bit of a lottery. Some people have really good doctors, really good nurses, really good specialists, really good physiotherapists who can give you a good letter. Sometimes they can't. So as I say, if you can't get anything particularly useful, if you've got someone that cares for you, they could also write a letter to say what they do to help you. And at the end of the day, they should be basing it on your own testimony in your application form and at your PIP assessment. And if you don't get it first time round and you go to appeal, then it will be an independent judge that will assess it, and there'll be another doctor there. There'll be someone that knows about disability. So you do get a few chances to do it. So I hope that answers that question. And Bridget Martin said to try again. They check the video when you appeal, which they didn't on the first decision. Also to stress bad days when you can barely get out of bed. So yeah, just as I say, it's all about what you're like 50% of the days of the year. So I think in the past there's been some slightly confusing advice about only talking about bad days. You have to be honest. Like you don't want to be fraudulent by pretending that every day is exactly the same if that is not the case. But what they're looking at, as I say, is what you're like 50% of the days of the year. So if you're saying, I don't know, a third of the days of the year I'm okay, but 2/3 of the year, or it just has to be 51% of the days of the year, just over half the days of the year I've got these conditions and they affect me like this, and that means that I can't cook, I can't wash, or I need someone to help me, or I need someone to prompt me, or I need someone to supervise me, or I need to use these aids, then that's what they should be looking at. Okay, so another question is, I'm unhappy with the decision made by the DWP regarding my PIP application. What is the process to challenge this decision? So the first stage, if you're unhappy with a benefit decision, is to do something called requesting a mandatory reconsideration. So it's a two-stage process if you want to challenge something. The first stage is you contact the DWP, Department for Work and Pension. So in this instance, PIP. You can call PIP and say, hi, I want to challenge this decision. Usually you have a month to challenge it from the date on the letter sent to you, but when you call them you can say, can I have an extension, which they may agree to. You can also say, can I have a copy of the assessment report? So when you get your decision letter, it will give you a brief summary of how they've made their decision and what points they've awarded you. But if you ask for a full copy of the assessment report, you can get more breakdown of the decision and how they made it. And usually if you ask for that, they'll give you an extra 2 weeks before you can, to gather everything to challenge the decision. But I've had clients who've got 4-week extensions. So, the sorts of reasons they might give you an extension is, your letter was very delayed because of coronavirus post issues. You need to get medical evidence and it will take you a couple of weeks to get a doctor's appointment. You want to seek some benefits advice and, it will take a little while for you to be able to speak to someone about it. Or you're feeling really ill at the moment. So, you're not able to look at it just now, but you're hoping in 2 weeks you'll be a bit better and you can look at it then. So although the deadline is a month, the actual absolute deadline is 13 months for challenging it. But obviously, the longer the delay, the better the reason is that it has to be for why it's late. But yeah, so as I say, you can either call them up and you can just say over the phone, I'm unhappy with this decision. It said that I could drive and therefore I'm fine, but actually I still have loads of difficulties doing things with my hands. I can't chop food, I can't open tins, I can't carry things, I can't wash myself. So you could go through it on the phone, but it is, and that might be okay, but it can be helpful if you can write it all out in a letter and just show exactly what points you think you should have got and why, the impact on you, any help you get, and make it clear that it is your health condition. It's not enough to just say, my partner does this for me, because that doesn't prove that your partner has to do it for you. So you need to start with, because of my health condition, it's not safe for me to chop things. As a result, I either have to buy takeaways or my partner has to cook for me. So you just, kind of go through it like that. And then do refer to the reliably regulation, which you can find more about on the website PIP info, all one word, pipinfo.net. and that will just give you a bit of detail on the reliability regulations, so whether you can do it safely, repeatedly, to an acceptable standard in a reasonable time period, because all of that could be relevant. But yeah, you can put that in a letter. You can try and get the medical evidence to support everything you're saying in your letter. If you've been keeping a diary about your health condition, that could help, then you could just put that in. If you've got anyone that helps you out, that cares for you, and they've written something, you could put that in, and you send that off to them. Hopefully, if you do all of that, they'll change the decision and you'll get what you want. If you do all of that and they still say no, you're not getting it, or they give you a higher amount of PIP, but you still think you should get more, then you can appeal it. In which case, if you go on the gov.uk website and Google PIP appeal form, then you can either do an online appeal form, and you do have to do the appeal within a month of getting the result of the mandatory reconsideration. But again, on the appeal form, there is a space where you can put why it was late. Now, the nice thing about appeals is that once you've submitted an appeal, that's not the end. You can keep sending evidence afterwards. So you might submit an appeal with your reasons and say, I'm going to send medical evidence as soon as possible. And then, because unfortunately it can take up to 12 months to have an appeal hearing, that does give you lots of extra time to try and get some medical evidence. Bear in mind that the medical evidence has to be about how you were on the date of your assessment. So if your conditions got worse since then, that will not be taken into account. So try and make sure your medical evidence is talking about that period before your assessment. And sometimes, it is, even if you're scared about going to a hearing, if you are able to appeal and then send additional medical evidence, often the DWP will, because everything you send to the court, the DWP gets a copy of, everything the DWP sends to the court, you get a copy of, then the DWP might see that new medical evidence and think, oh, okay, this proves that they are entitled to more PIP than we initially thought, and they might just write to you and say, look, we've actually changed your decision, and then you don't need to go to the appeal. So it's almost like getting 3 opportunities to challenge the decision. So it's always worth doing it, although I know it can be very sort of stressful and draining. But, as I say, 76% success rate at appeals, and there's lots of online resources out there to help you, and there's Citizens Advice and the Disability Law Service. Okay, so that's about challenging a decision. So we've got a few more questions and 3 minutes left, so I'll see if I can whiz through these. So someone's been diagnosed with scleroderma and Raynaud's for the last year or so, struggling with day-to-day living. Although they work at present, it's not going to last very long as they find it difficult to manage. Applied for PIP and been refused. I'm sure they do not understand the complexities of this condition, as the questions they ask did not seem very relevant. Is there anyone who can help me to resubmit my claim and to assist with the other support I desperately need, such as adaptations to my house? So, as I say, there's a load of resources that I've been mentioning that can help you fill in that form, the best that you can. And as I say, try and get medical evidence to support it. In terms of adaptations to your home, I'll just look it up again. Basically, if you contact the Adult Social Services Department of your council and ask for a needs assessment, and if you look at NHS website needs assessment, it will give you more details. But what happens then is someone should contact you from the council, and they can give an assessment of if you need any care or any help, say with shopping, or if there's anything that can be adapted to your house. And depending on if you're on a low income, they may be able to help you pay for that. So there is a grant, which I think it's different in the regions, but in England at least, I think, I can't remember what it's called. I'm just going to look it up. It should all come as part of your needs assessment. They should mention it to you. But yeah, it's called a Disabled Facilities Grant for adaptations to your home. So if you just Google Disabled Facilities Grant, it will give you a bit more information about that. So that's something you could apply for. As I say, it will depend on the level of your savings and your income. It's a bit similar to a benefits assessment, but it is also a bit more different. So if you've got any questions about community care issues, such as care you might be entitled to, or disability adaptations grants, you can contact the Disability Law Service. We do provide community care advice for anyone in, I think, England and Wales. So you can go on our website, which is www.dls.org.uk. You can email us at advice@dls.org.uk, or you can call us on 0207 791 9800. And I think the Facebook page has been linked to this video, so hopefully that will lead you to DLS's information. So yeah, thanks for all your questions. I have got a little bit of extra. So I'm just going to see if any of the other questions are ones that we haven't really talked about. So husband's eligible for carer's allowance. As I say, that will all depend on the things I talked about earlier, whether you're getting the right disability benefit, whether they're caring for you 35 hours a week. You can look at the Citizens Advice website for entitlement to carer's allowance. Yeah, someone's asking if you've got Raynaud's, can you get PIP? It's all about the impact on you of that condition. So you'd have to go through the points and check to see if you would get enough points to get PIP. So at least 8 in either section. Someone wants to know if they're eligible for any allowances or help with bills for heating. It could be, it all depends on your circumstances. You can use a benefits calculator. Universal credit is the obvious one if you're not getting anything else. In terms of heating, if you are in debt, get debt advice from National Debtline or Citizens Advice, but sometimes energy companies have grants. So if you are on a low income and you're behind with your heating bills, then they may be able to offer you a grant. It will depend on your provider. You can also go to the Turn to Us website, turn number 2 at US, and they've got a list of grants that might be available to you as well. And then I've got scleroderma and Raynaud's. Pain in my legs and body makes it unbearable for me to walk and function alone without help. Am I eligible for a disability living allowance? No one can claim disability living allowance anymore. It's been phased out. So it would be personal independence payment or attendance allowance if you're over pension age. But it sounds like you might be entitled, but you'd have to go through the points and double check. Is there any financial support available from the government to help me with short-term living costs, as my mum has scleroderma, has been told to shield and so cannot work? Yeah, I mean, there's obviously workplaces are able to furlough people, but the deadline for that is over now. They can pay people statutory sick pay as well if they're furloughing, if they're shielding, although I think shielding is sort of recently come to an end. So it would be if she's too sick to work, maybe she could get statutory sick pay, and either or both of you might be entitled to universal credit. She might be entitled to personal independence payment. So we'd have to sort of check whether she meets the criteria, and if she does get it, then maybe you could get carer's allowance if you're caring for her. And then finally, I've had Raynaud's since childhood. I suppose I just got on with it in the past, but now know I'll have to go on the sick as I'm unable to work. What benefit should I be claiming, as it seems very confusing? So as I said, yeah, the main one, if you're not getting anything, is universal credit, personal independence payment, and council tax support. So I hope that was helpful for everyone. I think I've answered all the questions. As I say, generally information can be found on the Citizens Advice website. We've also got some fact sheets on the Disability Law Service website, and particularly we've got one which is about all the recent changes because of coronavirus. And I think we've got links to some other webinars that we've done on our website as well on benefits. And we're on Twitter at, I think, DLS_law. So if you can just search on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for our details. Oh, shielding hasn't come to an end yet in Scotland or Wales. Yeah, so it's everything keeps changing the law. So yeah, if you're shielding, then hopefully you can get statutory sick pay if you're not getting furloughed. And the government sort of changes things every day, so do kind of keep checking. If you happen to be a benefits advisor, the Ask CPAG website is very good for up-to-date information, and also RightsNet gives emails every day telling you changes, and you can also follow their Twitter account, RightsNet. But if you sign up for the RightsNet email updates, they're really useful, and they're doing them for free at the moment if they are relevant to coronavirus. It's been, I've really enjoyed answering your questions, and you can go to the resources that I've mentioned if you want to find out more information. Okay, then have a nice day. Bye everyone.